سلام، پدرام هستم. اینجا ماسل کاتالیسته. تو این ویدیو همراه من باشین. قراره بریم سراغ تحلیل داوری مستر المپیا 2025 دسته اوپن توسط تایلر منیون، نایب رئیس IFBB پرو MPC و اونطور که تو اسکور کارت ها درج شده سرداور المپیا سابق بریم میدونستیم که استیو واینبرگر بوده، ولی خب حالا تو اسکور کارت ها اسم تایلر داره به عنوان سرداور قید میشه. حالا تایلر منیون نوه جیم منیون رئیس MPC و IFBB پرو، خیلی نمیخوام در مورد خودش توضیح بدم. جوان 31-2 ساله‌ایه که به واسطه پدرش و پدر بزرگش تو مسابقات از قدیم حضور داشته و چند سالی هم هست که داره تو این حوزه فعالیت میکنه. خب همین اولش بگم که تایلر در مورد مسابقه گفته که مسابقه خیلی نزدیک بوده، گفته که نفرات برتر مسابقه آماده اومده بودن، همه تقریبا کاندیشن خوبی آورده بودن. عمده انتقاداتی که از هادی چوپان داشته، یعنی جاهایی که به هادی چوپان فیگوری رو نداده، اشاره به پایین تنه هادی و درک بوده و در مجموع 5 تا فیگور رو به درک داده: جفت بازو از جلو، لت از جلو، قفسه از جانب، جفت بازو از پشت و پشت بازو از جانب و 3 تا فیگور رو هم به هادی داده: لت از پشت، شکم اوران و موست ماسکولار. و البته تاکید کرده که یه سری از فیگورها خیلی نزدیک بودن، فیگورهای از جمله جفت بازو و لت از جلو، فیگور پشت بازو از جانب که این 3 تا رو به درک داده بود و فیگور لت از پشت که به هادی داده. و در واقع هادی و درک از نظر تایلر هر کدوم 2 تا فیگور رو با فاصله بردن قاطعانه. حالا بریم ترجمه صحبت ها رو ببینیم، فیگور به فیگور جلو میریم، بعدش حالا منم یه ذره صحبت میکنم.
First up is the front double bicep pose. This pose, along with quite a few other poses, I think are pretty close when it comes to deciding who wins the pose. In the front double bicep, for Derek, obviously he has great taper, a nice small waist. For Derek, his legs were definitely up in size. He definitely kept his leg size for this show. You see nice deep lines in the separation throughout his legs. You see good leg width from the front, and he just held on to more volume in his legs. Obviously, a weakness for Derek in this pose is his inner arms don't really have much detail, and obviously he doesn't really have much of a bicep peak. Now we move over to Hadi. Again, Hadi and Derek are built very similarly. So you see, again, a very nice taper into a nice small waist, the flaring lats. Hadi is very conditioned. You go down to the lower body and the legs are very conditioned, but you see that the legs definitely do not have the same size as Derek's. They're separated, they're definitely conditioned, and then you just don't see that same leg width throughout the legs and the quads, and also the same sweep. I would say that Hadi also has a little bit less sweep on the right side than the left. It was pretty evident that it was a little bit imbalanced between those two legs, but overall the leg size just was not the same as Derek's. Bicep wise and inner arm detail, he obviously has much better bicep peaks and more detail in the biceps. So as you can see, it's a very close pose. They both have that very nice taper. When it comes to the arms, Hadi has the better arms. When it comes to the legs, Derek has the better legs. Separation through the legs, Derek has a little bit better separation in the legs and obviously a little bit better size. Hadi's conditioning of the muscles themselves are a little bit better. The feathering was there. Throughout the upper body, I would say that Hadi was a little bit more conditioned with a little bit more detail overall as well. But obviously Derek was in shape here and still conditioned too. For me, because of the overall size, really, I think there's a little bit of a size difference overall. I gave this pose to Derek by a hair to make it 1 pose to 0. Next up is the front lat spread pose. For both these guys, I don't think it's their strongest pose. It's not weak by any means, but I don't think it is their strongest pose. So first with Derek, you can see that actually the size and the detail on his outer arms are much better than what his inner arm looks like when they're raised up for the front double. He had good volume and cap to his delts. Chest wise, his chest lacks, some of that striation and detail. I think it looks thicker in some poses than others. You can see really just a touch of thickness, especially through the lower pecs in this pose, but he definitely could use more thickness and more of that detail and striation throughout the upper pec and whole entire chest as a whole. Again, he has very wide lats going down into a nice small waist. He does have detail in the midsection throughout the abs, and then like I stated about his legs before, the legs were solid here. We move over to Hadi. For me, Hadi's chest is actually even flatter than Derek's. What I mean by this is the muscle itself doesn't look as thick. You don't really see the thickness there. His chest is obviously a little bit more separated, but it doesn't have that same separation and striation and detail that you see in his chest in some of these other poses. Going to the outer arms and shoulders, I actually think Derek in this pose, his outer arms have more volume and more mass to them than Hadi's. Derek's shoulders also have more volume and mass to them than Hadi's as well. Hadi's shoulders are a little bit flat. You can see the shape of the shoulders here. It's just not the same as Derek's. But again, he has very wide lats going down into a nice small waist. He definitely has detail throughout the abs and the midsection. And then again, his lower body is conditioned, but the lower body is not the same as Derek's. So because I think the outer arms and shoulders and the chest, how it all flows on Derek compared to Hadi, I think Derek is better there. Plus Derek's advantage in the legs. I gave this pose to Derek to make it 2 poses to 0. Next up is the side chest pose. For Derek here again, you can see his outer arms and shoulders are actually not bad at all. So for arms being, a weakness for him when they're raised, whenever they're in these side poses, they actually look very, very solid. I mean, just compare it to Hadi's right here. Again, Derek's shoulder, I think, is better than Hadi's shoulder. Derek's outer arms have a little bit more of that volume and roundness. Hadi has a little bit more of that peak to the bicep here. So all things considered, they're very similar. I think width throughout the top from shoulder to shoulder, meaning shoulder throughout the chest to the back shoulder, I think Derek is wider. I also think that actually Derek's chest is thicker than Hadi's. You can see that chest flatness here, and even with the back pec that's pushed over, you can see Derek's is thicker than Hadi's as well. They both keep their midsections tight, go down into the lower body, and you see that Hadi's legs are a little bit smaller than Derek's. They both have very good separation and detail to them, but you just see more of that density and mass to Derek's leg, and obviously they're both in very good condition. So for me, again, because of where Derek beats Hadi in this pose, especially throughout, actually both the upper and the lower body for me, I thought this was a pretty clear pose to Derek to make it 3 poses to 0. Next up is the back double bicep pose. Obviously, we know Derek has a very, very crazy back double bicep. His back itself is, ridiculous. He has very good depth and thickness to it. Very nice width into a nice small waist. I think his legs from the back looked pretty big. He kept really, I think, solid size on his legs this time around. You can see he has obviously the detail and the striation to the glutes and the hamstring, but you see that sweep from the quads that come into play to really accentuate the leg width here in Derek from the back. Shoulders solid from the back, not the most overpowering, but solid. Again, arms here, you see he has solid tricep development, but the bicep peak in development could stand to be better. Now we move over to Hadi. Hadi's back itself compared to Derek, Hadi's back has good width. Doesn't quite match Derek's width, but the real difference here is the density to the back. As conditioned as Hadi is throughout the chest and the midsection from the front, you don't see that same conditioning in the back here. So it just doesn't have that depth and 3D look to it. Go down into the lower body, and again, you don't see that development and leg width or even hardness again to the legs in the lower body that you do in Derek's. So for me, I think this is a very clear pose for Derek. I think he exposes a lot of Hadi's weaknesses here to make it 4 poses to 0. Next up is the back lat spread pose. Now, this is another pose that I think is very, very close. Why? Because again, the lower body difference, I think Derek has the advantage in the lower body here. However, when we move into the upper body, I think that Derek is not opening up every time that he hits this pose. So you can see the density and the thickness that Derek has to his back. Again, his triceps, rear delts, everything actually looks very solid here. But the back itself, he's not opening it up to display the width that obviously he has. Hadi, on the other hand, does a very, very good job of opening up his back all the way. So you see thickness and density in detail throughout his back. Also, his lats look wider than Derek's in this pose, but he has the disadvantage in the lower body. Really, I think this is a very close pose because while Hadi's width is better, you still see that Derek has that thickness and 3D look, and Derek's lower body is overall better. But for me, I think this pose went back and forth a lot. It really all depended on how Derek was opening up the lats, and I ended up giving this pose to Hadi, definitely because of the width and how he opened up his back to make this 4 poses to 1. Next up, we're going to move into the side tricep pose. Again, here from the side, you see kind of a little bit more of the size difference between Derek and Hadi at this show. Really, in this pose, you can see, I think even a little bit more than the side chest, the difference in the size of their legs, the density density of their legs. So I think Derek has a lower body advantage here. Now, when it comes to the upper body, again, I think that Derek's chest is a little bit thicker than Hadi's. You can see Hadi's striations though a little bit more in this pose than the side chest and his backpack. Going to the outer arms and shoulders, again, I feel like the tricep development, the shoulders, just the outer arm in general is a little bit better on Derek's. Both their midsections are tight. They both have good abs, but Hadi's obviously, that's his one crazy advantage. He has that crazy obliques and ab detail. So for me in this pose, again, because of the lower body advantage and overall size and thickness and roundness, I gave this pose to Derek to make it 5 poses to 1. Next up is the abdominal and thigh pose. For Derek, I think he's definitely improved this over time. You see now nice taper going down into his waist. We see much more ab development in detail than he previously showed. Arms overhead, arms are okay. Obviously, he doesn't have that detail and peak that others have. Go down into the lower body. Again, the legs, they held size and thickness and had good separation to them. However, when you move over to Hadi, this is always one of his strongest poses. This is one of his strengths, is his core and detail to the midsection. He has great taper, chest looks full. He has the biceps that are peaked, development good. Go down to the lower body, and even though his legs are down a little bit, you see the conditioning throughout. Overall, just the flow of the pose and the conditioning that gets brought out, especially through the midsection. I thought this was a clear pose for Hadi to make it 5 poses to 2. Then lastly, we have the most muscular pose. Again, I felt like Derek has improved this pose. He still needs more of that thickness and striation and detail throughout the chest. However, outer arms and shoulders definitely looked better. Legs kept the size, like I said, so everything holds for the lower body from the front that I said before. Even though Derek got better, you still go over to Hadi. Again, this shows off all of his strengths, the detail and conditioning throughout his chest, his midsection. Here, his chest, while it still isn't the thickest chest, it still is thick enough, and it shows the crazy detail and striations throughout the chest. His arms and shoulders tend to look a little bit better in this most muscular pose when he has his fists touching together like this. So the development in the outer arms and shoulders is there. Again, the legs are a little bit downsized, but you see the striations and conditioning throughout the legs. And again, just the overall polish and flow of this pose. It's very hard to take it off Hadi, and I thought it was a clear pose for Hadi to make it 5 poses to 3.
خب اول اینکه این ویدیوهایی که اینجا استفاده کردم مربوط میشه به روز اول مسابقه پیجادینگ. گفته میشه که مسابقه 2 روزه و هر 2 روز به طور مجزا قضاوت میشه. خب نمیفهمم برای چی نباید برای روز دوم هم تحلیل این چنینی بیارم و فقط بر مبنای روز اول داره داوری شد و در واقع رأیی که داده رو موشکافی میکنه. میگه 2 تا بدنساز تو چند تا فیگور نزدیکن، هادی و درک. خودش میگه تو فینال هادی کاندیشن تر اومده و به این هم اشاره میکنه که کاندیشن درک در طول مسابقه تو شب دوم کمتر و کمتر شده. با این حال این واسه تایلر کافی نبوده که رأیش رو عوض کنه و تو شب دوم هم به قهرمانی درک لانسفورد رأی داده. در واقع اگه همین تایلر رأیش رو عوض میکرد یا هر داور دیگه‌ای که هر 2 شب به قهرمانی درک رأی داده بودن، امتیازات هادی و درک برابر میشد. مشابه اتفاقی که عیناً تو پیتسبورگ برای درک لانسفورد و نیک واکر رخ داد. این خزعبلات که روتین انفرادی و این چیزا تاثیر میذاره رو بذارین کنار. این اصلا قضاوت نمیشن. تو پیتسبورگ هم قضاوت نشدن. قبلش خیلی حرفا میزدن، اونجا دیدیم که اصلا روتین انفرادی معیار قضاوت داوران نیست. اگه 2 بدنساز تو 2 مرحله مسابقه مجموع آراشون مساوی باشه، مثل پیتسبورگ یه دور دیگه بدنسازا رو می‌خواستن که کنار هم فیگور بگیرن. اونجا هم تا جایی ادامه میدادن که یکی فید بشه، همون بلایی که سر نیک واکر به گفته خودشون تو پیتسبورگ آوردن. و خب خود تایلر داره میگه که درک تو شب دوم در حال فید شدن بوده. حالا البته اگه ازشون پرسیده بشه میگن که ما که از رأی هم دیگه خبر نداشتیم و رأی مخفی بوده تا زمانی که حالا سرداور که خود استاد تایلر منیون بوده رأی رو جمع کرده. اینجا خود تایلر میگه که فیگورایی مثل جفت بازو از جلو، لت از جلو، پشت بازو از جانب که به درک دادن خیلی نزدیک بوده. خود تایلر میگه که درک کاندیشن قابل قبول داشت. اگر تو فینال در حال فید شدن بوده و این کاندیشن در حال افت بوده و از طرفی هادی به گفته خود تایلر در طول مسابقه در حال بهتر شدن بوده، به خصوص تو شب دوم، آیا یکی از این فیگورهایی که به درک دادن یا حتی 2 تاش رو نمیتونستن به هادی بدن، بین فیگورهایی که به هادی دادن هم فقط لت از پشت نزدیک بوده و در مورد لت از پشت خود آقای تایلر منیون داره میگه که به خاطر این بوده که درک نمیتونسته پشتش رو کامل باز کنه و در واقع یعنی اصلا راهی نداشته که به درک بدن. حالا این نکته دیگه که من تو تحلیل تایلر دیدم این بود که اینا دائما میگن که ما بدنسازا رو با مسابقات قبلیشون مقایسه نمی‌کنیم، ولی اینجا هر بار به درک میرسه میگه که تو این فیگور نسبت به شوی قبلی بهتر شده، تو این فیگور بهتر شده، تو این فیگور پیشرفت کرده. و خب پیشرفت یعنی در مقایسه با مسابقه قبلی. ما آخرش نفهمیدیم مسابقات قبلی ملاک هستن یا نیستن. و خب در نهایت این رو باید بگم که تایلر این رو میگه که تو شب اول درک از نظرش برنده بدون حرف و حدیث بوده، ولی تو شب دوم هادی هم میتونسته برنده بشه، ولی در نهایت تایلر تصمیم گرفته که درک رو برنده ببینه و در واقع اونی که قهرمان مسابقه رو تعیین کرده خود تایلر منیون بوده، سرداور مسابقه، کسی که رأیش قطعا رو رأی بقیه داورا تاثیر میذاره و توضیحاتش رو دیدیم. حالا نظر شما چیه؟ حتما این پایین در موردش کامنت بذارید. مرسی که تا انتهای این ویدیو هم همراه من بودین. لایک و ساب و کامنت فراموش نشه. حتما ما رو به دوستان خودتون معرفی کنید. اگه انتقاد یا پیشنهادی دارید میتونید این پایین برام کامنت بذارید یا از طریق صفحه اینستاگرامی ماسل کاتالیسته با من در ارتباط باشید.